What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video brought to you by the Playbook Sports Podcast. My name is Colin. We're coming at you with the New England Patriots offseason video. What are they going to do this offseason? No Bill Belichick, no Tom Brady in New England. Obviously, Brady hasn't been there for years, but no Bill Belichick. Interesting to see what they are this year, not only this year, but in the upcoming seasons. Promotion for Gerard Mayo to head coach this offseason. So we will see what the new look Patriots look like. They hold the number 3 pick in this draft, and they have a whole bunch of unrestricted free agents. So how are they going to fill out this roster, and how are they going to compete in the AFC East and in the AFC in general?
Before we get into today's video, guys, I just want to give a special shout out to today's sponsors, starting with Goldfine and Bowles, lawyers for the injured. Personal injury, workers' compensation, those are their two things, but any sort of legal advice, they're the people to call. Give them a phone call, 309-673-5144. Tell them we sent you, okay? And I'd also like to shout out SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video as well. Use promo code PlaybookSports on their website to get $20 off your first purchase of $30 or more. Let's get back to the video.
So looking at the New England Patriots moves they've already made, another news, obviously talking about Bill Belichick mutually parting ways. It's interesting to see him not getting a head coaching job throughout the league, being one of those head coaches that's still left on the block. But then again, you got to ask yourself, how bad does he still want to stick around the game of football? You know, does he want to break that record for most wins all time, or does he want to just enjoy life for however much there is left? That sounds grim, but he is an older gentleman. Coming off a 4-13 season last year, fourth in the AFC East to last place. As I mentioned, promoted Gerard Mayo to head coach. Matthew Slater, longtime captain of the locker room, special teams guru, retires. Lawrence Guy Jr., Adrian Phillips, J.C. Jackson, all released. J.C. Jackson, not as surprising. He's kind of been floating around the league the last few seasons. But the other two guys have been there for a long time on the defensive side as well. Looking at the one guy they franchise tagged, Kyle Duggar, one of the better defensive players on this New England Patriots team, so a guy they have to keep around moving forward. Looking at the 2024 cap space, as you guys know, the salary cap has been raised going into the 2024 offseason to $255.4 million. New England Patriots have one of the most highest cap spaces available to go out and make some moves this offseason. They have right around $78 million in free cap to spend, not only on draft picks, but also free agents to fill this roster as well. 12-ish million based off their draft picks has to be put aside to sign those draft picks, which gives them about $67 million to spend in free agency. So let's get into it. Let's have some fun here. They're unrestricted free agents this season. Running back Ezekiel Elliott, wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver Jalen Reagor, tight end Hunter Henry, tight end Mike Gesicki, offensive lineman Trent Brown, offensive lineman Mike Owanu, probably pronounced that wrong, defensive lineman Lawrence Guy, safety Adrian Phillips, corner J.C. Jackson, corner Jalen Mills, corner Miles Bryant, linebacker Josh Uche, probably pronounced that wrong, linebacker Mac Wilson, and then linebacker Anthony Jennings, and then kicker Nick Folk. So a fair amount of unrestricted free agents this season. I'm looking at several playmakers from last year. It's hard to say that for the New England Patriots and playmakers, I know. But Ezekiel Elliott had a decent end of the season. Hunter Henry had an okay season, although posting his career low in receiving yards. And we all know Jalen Reagor, what he's about. So let's get into it. What are the New England Patriots going to do to not only put themselves into contention potentially, but also trying to revamp this rebuild, right? This is supposed to be, depending who you ask, this could be the first year of the rebuild. Bill Belichick, as long as you have him around as head coach, your plan and your intention is winning. Once Bill Belichick's gone, obviously you still are no one's intentions to lose. But at this point, I think they fully accepted the rebuild and their full rebuild mode. So this is my opinion, the first year of the Patriots rebuild. And what's the one thing what's the best way to go about a rebuild, right? What's the best ways to build a team? Through the draft and then trying to hit on one or two free agent moves this season, right? You want to get a couple of guys who can make contributions to your offense or your defense or just contribute into winning overall. So what are they going to do here? First off, I have one cut and one cut only, and it only saves $100,000 in cap space. So virtually no cap space saved, but Devontae Parker is still on this active roster for the New England Patriots, and he can't possibly be on this roster, right? We're not only talking about injuries over his career, and I'm not hating on Devontae Parker. It sounds like I'm hating on him. I don't know the guy. I have no problem with Devontae Parker, but when you watch the games, the guy doesn't get any separation. He can't go up and get the jump ball anymore. That's really the one, claim to fame back when he was in Miami. And he's just not as good as a receiver anymore. And it sounds tough to say, but Devontae Parker, we're buying into this rebuild, and I'm sorry, you got to go, my friend. So this is what we're doing, free agency. And New England Patriot fans, you're either going to find this, kind of humorous, or you're going to be absolutely pissed off by the way I'm going through this. A lot of these signings aren't flashy to the eyes, but in a rebuild, like, let's call it what it is. You just want to see some development from some key positions each year by year, and maybe you're not trying to win. I mean, in the season of tanking as we had in the tradition of tanking as we have it these days across all four major sports. Maybe the Patriots are kind of one of those years where we're going to draft, a quarterback high and see some development over year one, or just seeing some flashes, and then maybe year two or year three we are contending. So these are what I have them signing this offseason. You're losing Ezekiel Elliott. You still have Ramondre Stevenson at running back. I'm going to go out and get Antonio Gibson from the Washington Commanders, a running back that's only 26 years old. He's lost his starting job there to Brian Robinson. He's not going to come in here and be the starter. Ramondre Stevenson's still going to start from you. Similar backup, split reps role as he's had in Washington, as I mentioned. Estimated annual value of 3.6 million. I think it's kind of hilarious considering he hasn't made that the last couple of seasons. So we're going to offer him about 3 a year for 2 years just to come to New England to be a backup running back or change of pace split carry back with Ramondre. Antonio Gibson's the first signing here. Now here's the one splash. So I mentioned a lot of these aren't going to sound like super flashy plays, but there's one splash in here that I think you guys might like, or maybe you might not like them. It's Calvin Ridley. We're going to go out, and the one thing New England's been starving for what seems like several years here on end has been a legitimate target or a legitimate offensive weapon. And why wait for your potential rookie quarterback you're taking with the third overall pick to struggle for a year or two with the mid weapons you have to go out and get a guy? Why not get a guy before you even draft him? Right? Let's go out and get Calvin Ridley, who I personally believe is probably the best wide receiver on the free agent market currently. He'll be close to 30 by the time the season starts. First season back from suspension last year, 76 catches, a little over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Nothing to look at. Me, man. He had 8 touchdowns and 1,000 yards. Is pretty good for a first year back. He only played 5 games the year before he was suspended, so it was really his first full season in 3 years by the time it was over. Calvin Ridley, Spot Track has him at like 17 million estimated value. I think that seems a little high for Calvin Ridley. But then again, when you look around the league with Tyreek Hill making 30, and then several other premier wide receivers making that 24 plus million, maybe 17 doesn't sound ridiculous for Calvin Ridley, but we're going to offer him 16 a year for 2 years, 32 million. It doesn't lock him up. He's 30 years old. If he wants to leave after 2 years and not, spend the rest of his career in New England, he can do so, but at least gives you a chance to see your rookie quarterback with a premier wide receiver immediately when he comes into the league. Next guy up, we're going to bring back Hunter Henry, one of the few re-signings. As I mentioned, it was his career low in yards this past season with only 419. But he had an average season based across the board stats wise as well. Touchdowns, receptions, everything else was kind of run of the pack for Hunter Henry. It's just his yards were really down, and that's really based off quarterback play and really offensive play calling. But Hunter Henry at times last year was dominant, especially in the red zone in games. So he'll be 30 when the season starts. Estimated annual value is about $7.5 million. We're going to give him 8 just to come back, man, because we need a tight end. New England this season, I read off the names. Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Pharaoh Brown as well. So all 3 of their tight ends are unrestricted free agents. You got to bring somebody back. So we're bringing back Hunter Henry, and we're going to figure out the rest of them as well. Offensive lineman, we're bringing back Mike Onwenu. I'm terrible with names, guys. Crucify me in the comments. Guard who's been really good, 6th-round pick back in 2020. Played in a lot of games and 58+% of snaps each of the years he's been in the league. So he's been on the field. He's been able to produce. He'll be 27 by the time the season starts. Estimated value on Spot Tracks was 13.6 million. That seems a little high. But we're going to offer him a 10-year deal for 3 years. Keep him around, a staple of the interior of the line. You got to keep him there. A guy that's durable, a guy that's available, as he's proven the last few seasons. Panned out for a 6th-round pick. Time to give him his money and reward him for being as consistent as he's been. And now let's get into the guys we're going to bring in. And this is where the fun begins. And I've already mentioned a few guys we're bringing in with Calvin Ridley and Antonio Gibson. But let's look at the defensive side of the ball. Defensive head coach Gerard Mayo stepping up, obviously replacing defensive head coach Bill Belichick. So we know what New England's going to want to do. And when New England struggled last year, it wasn't necessarily their entire team struggling. Yes, at times both offense and defense struggled, but there were times when the Patriots were losing, whenever they were giving up, an average. I think they had like a 5-week span where they gave up like 14 or less points or 17 or less points. I forget what it was. They were going crazy and still losing games. So defenses wasn't the biggest issue last year, but you've already lost some guys, you've cut some guys, you got to re-sign some guys back. First one up here, not only does it help you out, but it also hurts a division rival, and it makes you laugh because it was a cap casualty or a potential cap casualty for that division rival, maybe not being able to sign him back. It's AJ Impinesa from the Buffalo Bills. He'll be 26 by the start of the season. He's played his whole career in Buffalo, played every game he possibly could, 6.5+ sacks the last 2 years each. Estimated annual value of 5.6 million. We're going to offer him 4 years for 28. That's 7 million a year. He's going to be 26, 4 years, keeps him to 30. I think that's a good range for a pass rusher. Now, will he want to come to division rival New England? Maybe, maybe not. Money talks at the end of the day. So we'll see. New England has a lot of cap space available. Do they splish splash on a couple of guys, or do they kind of divvy out some mid-tier money here, like 5 to 8 million to a lot of guys and fill some holes? I have them going out and getting this gentleman here. I'm not going to butcher his last name again, but it helps them with their pass rush immediately, especially losing a guy like Lawrence Guy Jr. All right, next one up here. We're going to sign another great name here, Aziz Al-Shahir. He was a former 49ers pick, was with the Tennessee Titans last year, so maybe a Vrabel connection there. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into that, though. But if there's anybody who liked Vrabel in Tennessee, I bet they maybe might like Gerard Mayo in New England. He'll be 27 by the start of the season. He's been very durable, playing a lot of the possible games in his career. He hasn't missed much. His best season last year was by far. He played over 1,000 snaps last year defensively, had 163 tackles last year at off linebacker. So this is a guy you're going to want to bring in. He's very consistent. He's durable, and he's quick to the ball. 163 tackles is insane through 17 games. Last year, he played on a 1-year, $5 million deal in Tennessee. So we're going to offer him 3 for 18. As I mentioned, to be 27. 3-year deal gets you to 30 and lets you kind of have some guys in that rebuild. You'll see here in this video, I have a lot of guys for that 2 to 4 year window. You don't want to commit in a rebuild to guys long term with big money, right? And these guys don't have big money by any means. They're like 5-6 million a year, but you don't want to commit to the length of the contract. So this gives contract flexibility not only New England but also to the player here. Come give us 2-3 years, and then if you want to leave after that to end your career somewhere else, by all means. Next guy up here, Anthony Walker Jr., linebacker for the Browns. Now, I know the last couple of years he's really struggled to stay on the field with the injury bug. Former Indianapolis Colt, shout out Bobby. But the last 2 years, he's played 15 combined games the last 2 seasons. So he's really struggled to stay on the field. He'll be 29 by the start of the year. But I think this is a guy you can go out. He's a sure tackler when he's on the field. And maybe it's a prove-it contract, right? A lot of teams might not be willing to take a risk on a guy who's approaching 30 and has injury concerns. But New England, you never know. It could be a cheap option to bring a guy in with linebacker. As I mentioned, you have 3 linebackers on the unrestricted free agent list. So maybe go out and sign a guy like this to a prove-it deal and let him come in and see what he can do. As I mentioned, he only had 55 combined tackles over 15 games the last 2 years. And then before that, the 4 seasons before that, he averaged 14 games played across those 4 seasons with 108 tackles each, like combined or average those 4 seasons. So quick math there. He played 56 games and had 432 tackles through the last 4 seasons. Before the 2 years, only 15 games played and 55 tackles. So before these injury concerns, he was fantastic. But is he that same player now? Maybe give him a prove-it deal, less money, and we'll see. So as I mentioned, he signed a 1-year deal with Cleveland each of the last 3 years. So maybe you offer him like a 2-year, $7 million, $3.5 million a year. 2 years will, keep it to that prove-it deal. Whereas if the injury history keeps up, well, you don't have a lot invested in him. You can just, cut him. It's not a huge cap casualty. Or if he sticks around for both years, you're not tied down long-term contract-wise with him. Next one up here, you got to replace the safety you cut in Adrian Phillips. So you're going to bring in former Cowboy here, Jaron Kearse. He'll be 30 by the start of the year, but he's got plenty of gas still in the tank. He's a nice safety. He can come down in the box and play a little linebacker. I think him and Jabril Peppers next to each other would be kind of electric. They're both kind of not, I don't say the same player, but I can see shades of each other in one another. Pause. That sounded weird. He'll be 30 at the start of the year, made $5 million last year for Dallas. He signed a 2-year, $10 million deal back before the 2022 season. I'm thinking he's going to be looking for a similar deal here. Couple of year deal, 10 million. Come to New England, Jaron Kearse. Let's pair you up with Jabril Peppers and pair up this defense with a defensive-minded head coach. But last and final free agent signing I have here. Got to go get another corner with those corners I listed leaving. It's Sean Bunting from Tennessee. It's another Tennessee guy, and maybe I'm buying too much into their Vrabel, kind of implanting the ideologically in these guys the Patriot way. And I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. But I could see him going to New England here. He'll be 27 by the time the season starts. Signed a 1 year, $3.5 million deal with Tennessee last year. So it's not like he has any sort of really allegiance or long-term, commitment to Tennessee. He signed a 1 year deal last year, and that deal's up. His estimated value is $6.7 million annually, which is interesting. He got 3.5 last year. So we're going to offer him 3 years, $18 million. Once again, it's another short deal. Lets you kind of build around your key pieces during this rebuild process. You don't have a lot of assets built up into a lot of these guys. You have 2 to 4 years and about $5 to $8 million per year for a lot of these guys. It gives you flexibility to be able to move on from these guys without really suffering a huge hit. So I didn't go super splashy on those free agent pickups. I made the one big move with Calvin Ridley. It's a lot of money, about 16, 17 million a year. But it just gives your potential first-round quarterback a legit weapon day one coming into the league. So with that, let's get to the NFL draft. I do have the Patriots taking a quarterback with a 3rd overall pick. Now, whatever quarterback that is, I couldn't tell you because I really don't know who's going number 2 or 3. I do firmly believe Caleb Williams probably is number 1. So it really depends if Drake May or Jaden Daniels falls to the Patriots at 3, or if J.J. McCarthy all of a sudden comes out of left field and takes that number 3 spot. Crazier things have happened. We know it's the NFL draft. So I have the New England going quarterback from the first round, and in the second round coming back, they'll have an early pick in the second round. I have them going defense here. Defensive minded head coach. We got to get a pick. You need some more help in the secondary, but also if somehow, some way, let's go secondary first. You need some help in the secondary. So if someone like a Kool-Aid McKinstry or like Ennis Rakestraw Jr. or a Kamari Lassiter is kind of floating around that 35 pick area, or if this guy, if somehow, some way, Chop Robinson, and I don't think he makes it out of the first round, but if somehow, some way he's sitting there for New England in the second round at 35, I think New England would be really dumb not to take him. A guy that tested very well at the combine and a guy I think is going to fly up draft boards. I don't think he'll be there in the second round, but as I said, crazy things happen, man. People you think are going to go early somehow stick around at day 2, and some people you think have no business going in the first round. You're like, who the hell is this guy gets picked? So the draft's a great time. New England Patriot fans, are you happy with that? Was that a terrible offseason for you guys? Will you guys be showing up with, picket fences at the stake? Will I be burnt at the stake? Leave a comment down below. What would you do, or what do you hope the Patriots do if you're a Patriot fan? What moves you liked, moves you hated in this video? Leave a comment down below. Leave a like on this video if you like these type of videos. Check out some of our other content here on the Playbook Sports Podcast. We have more teams videos coming out with off-season moves, what we think they might or should do. Stick around. If you guys enjoy this content, leave a like, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.